Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. John Schmeelk, Matthew Citak with you, taking your calls at 201-939-4513. 201-939-4513. We have Joe Schoen's press conference coming up this afternoon. What is it, 3 o'clock or 3:30?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. So I don't believe we're streaming that live, correct?
We are.
Oh, we are streaming it live. Okay,
Yep.
Well, there you go. YouTube and Giants.com or just the app? What are we doing? Both?
Yes. Both.
YouTube and the app. So go check that out. Joe Schoen will be live at 3 o'clock today. And then Dottino and I will record a little reaction to that. That'll go up on the Giants Huddle podcast feed. And I know there's all this anticipation of what is Joe Schoen going to say. And I don't think this is going to be some big news-breaking scenario here. I could end up being wrong. I don't know. But the fact that it's just Joe Schoen and not Brian Dable with him tells me that this is probably just going to be Joe answering questions, and I don't expect any big breaking news this afternoon or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big breaking news that a lot of our fans are probably waiting for, that we don't even know for sure if it's going to happen, but I have a feeling, I agree with you, I don't think it's going to happen today. Brian Dable spoke to the media yesterday and said...
Because that's a coaching decision. That's why. It's not a GM decision.
It is a coaching decision. Yeah. Although... in this situation, I guess there are some other factors in play.
Correct, I agree.
But
fair.
Brian Dable said we're going to take the whole week to evaluate things. I don't see any benefit of Joe Schoen coming out today, a day later, and making some big announcement. I think if that announcement is going to come before the Giants take the field next, it will be next week once Brian Dable talks to the media again. But as you said, we could be wrong. We don't know. We have no idea what he's actually going to say. So
yeah, you also don't want to, and I know fans aren't interested in this, but the team is still trying to win football games.
Of course.
You don't want to give the Bucs too much notice on who the quarterback might be next week. So I would think either, assuming Dable talks next Monday, I don't know I haven't seen the schedule next week. I don't know if they're doing that weird Thursday off day thing with practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. I don't know how they're doing that.
Yeah, my guess would be that Coach would talk on Monday. I feel like he typically talks.
And I imagine if they do, that would probably be the day they would do it and have that announcement. But maybe not. I don't know. The Giants could, decide to stretch things out a little bit. That would not be without precedence.
Wouldn't be the first time.
No, would not be the first time. All right, you heard my spiel on the game already, guys. I don't have that much else to say about it. I did not have a chance to do my little self-scout this morning. We had a meeting. I had to get ready for draft season. That'll be up Wednesday on the Giants app, Giants.com YouTube page. So I didn't do my red zone and takeaway deal like I promised you I would. It'll be ready for next Monday. I hope so. We'll see. So just give me your take on the game, what happened, and we'll get to the calls.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this quick. Overall, the Giants on Sunday in Munich just really did not do any specific thing in particularly so well that they deserved to win the game. It seemed like every single area kind of struggled. The only thing that had, pretty sustained success throughout the game was the run game. And then of course, first play in overtime, Tyrone Tracy, who was having a great game, fumbled the ball, which put a, bit of a tarnish on the good performance that we saw from the run game.
He also had the drop pass that turned into the interception.
Yeah.
The 2-4.
Yeah. So, but I mean, you're looking at the rest of this game between, the Giants' passing attack and then everything on defense. It wasn't good enough to win this game. And it's, key word here, frustrating, because this was definitely a game that, was winnable, similar to some of these other close losses that we've seen over the last 6 weeks or so. This was definitely a winnable game. It was against an opponent who, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like has an inferior roster.
I think that's fair. I said that last week, so I'm not going to change my mind on it now.
Yeah, but I mean, look, hats off to the Panthers. They played a great game overall. Chuba Hubbard, first game after getting that big extension, had the best game of his career.
And we warned you guys about him last week. He's a player.
Yeah, he's good. I mean, the Panthers wouldn't have given him a 4-year extension with real running back money if they didn't think he was a part of this team and a part of the future. So, yeah, look, it just didn't do anything strong enough to win the game. It's disappointing going into the bye 2-8. We have 7 games left in the season after the bye. I think that will be a very good time to try to develop these young players, see what a lot of these young players are made of, and see if they can not only be a part of the team moving forward into, next season, but could be like key contributors moving into the future. Like, I think these final 7 games are going to be very big for someone like, like Evan Neal, who, say what you want about him, about his tenure here with the Giants. Sunday was one of his better games that he's had against, since he's joined this team in 2022. Granted, again, the opponent wasn't the most talented opponent,
and he got beat a couple times in the fourth quarter, but Jones got the ball out before the pressure got there. So
yeah, but he did,
he did a nice job.
He did match up over half the game against Jadeveon Clowney, who is a legit defender, a good edge rusher.
You could tell they were putting him across from Neal on purpose,
and he held his own against him.
He did okay.
I mean, if you look at the final stats, granted, as you said, he did towards the second half get beat a couple of times that technically I guess didn't go down as pressures because Daniel Jones got rid of the ball, but. Yep. He only had 1 pressure allowed, according to Next Gen Stats and Pro Football Focus.
He played well.
And he stood out in a good way in the run game. There were times where he looked just downright dominant in the run game.
He moved people. Like the old David Deal line, the best part about playing offensive line is moving another man from point A to point B against his will. That's what Evan Neal did. He was moving people off the line of scrimmage. It was very impressive.
Yeah, so for sure, that was great to see, especially because that was his first game in like a year?
Yeah, and I said to Paul too, he wasn't on the ground a lot. We've seen in the past Evan Neal on the ground a lot. I just thought he was balanced and his movement skills were a lot smoother and better. And I wonder if that's because he's just healthier than he's been in a couple of years as well.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. So, look, I'm not trying to, paint a rosy picture after Sunday, but
no, Evan Neal's performance was a big deal. Big deal.
It was encouraging to see, and it's just players like that over these last 7 games that are really gonna, it's kind of time to show it. This is with a 2-8 record going into the final 7 games of the season. Chances are you're not making the playoffs. Even if you win out, you're 9-8, and that depends on the rest of the conference, but chances are you miss out on the playoffs anyway. So this is a good chance. Obviously, you still want to try to win games, and the Giants will continue to try to win games. But this is a great opportunity to see some of the young guys, give them extended action, guys that, potentially could be here next year and beyond. This will be a great sort of, I don't want to call it a tryout period, but a great just chance for them to showcase their skills to this coaching staff and front office.
Yeah, and figure out what your offseason plans and priorities are going to be, right? And you do that by evaluating the guys that you think are going to be here moving into next year, what guys maybe you don't think are going to be moving into next year, and then you decide what your postseason and offseason priorities will be, whether it's in the draft or free agency. The Giants should have a good amount of money in free agency to spend, regardless of what happens with the quarterback. And then they have draft picks, and they could get an extra 4th-round comp depending on how that thing shakes out. It looks good right now because Ben Bredesen's played an awful lot for the Bucs, so he's going to qualify as a lost free agent, which would help for the Giants in the way they do the formula.
I know right now the Giants are projected to get a 4th-round comp pick.
Yes.
Obviously, things can change.
And sometimes those projections are wrong.
That's true.
It does happen year to year. So the hope right now is to get the 4th, and then you draft well, and you try to continue to build here. Last thing I'll just say, until the red zone stuff and the takeaway stuff gets better, none of this is changing. Like, throw those 2 things together and then throw the run defense together. Those, to me, are the 3 Achilles heels of this team, Matt. On defense, they can't stop the run. On offense, they can't score touchdowns. And it wasn't even just settling for field goals this week. If they settled for field goals in the red zone this week, they would have won the game in regulation. They came up with 0 points 2 times because of turnovers, and they missed a field goal from, 43 yards? Is that what it was to kick them good out?
I think so.
That's 3 possessions inside the other team's 30-yard line. 0 points. 0 points.
It's tough to win games like that.
Can't. And Casillas and I always talk about this when we do our pre- and post-game on the radio. And this was Tom Coughlin's thing, and he's 100% right about it. The most determinative thing about winning football games is taking the ball away and protecting the football. And the Giants this year have not had, I said the stat before, I'll say it again, it is unbelievable that not just their overall turnover numbers, I'll give them to you in a second, that the Giants in any individual game this year have not managed to win the turnover battle. I'm going to go back and I'm going to check over the last 10 years how many times that's happened where a team has gone, or not a team, I'm not going to check every team. The Giants have gone 10 straight games without winning the turnover ratio. It's really amazing. You figured at some point the other team's just going to throw it to you by accident. Like the quarterback makes a bad decision, right? They just drop the ball. Something happens weird. They have a fumbled exchange on the snap. The handoff fumbles a handoff attempt. something weird. Like the quarterback goes to throw it and it comes out of his hand on the way back. These are things we see all the time in the National Football League. The Giants have not been a benefit of any of those things. That's mostly luck. But they haven't forced anything either. They have a ton of sacks. No strip sacks.
One strip sack. Brian
Correct.
Burns against the Browns.
One strip sack. Correct. I
But
forgot
you need
about
more
that
than one 10 games into the season.
Correct. One interception. Not one interception by the secondary.
And that interception was in the season opener
On a deflection.
by a rookie 6th-round pick linebacker.
Who was inactive this week. So that has to get fixed. Overall, the Giants are -6 in turnover ratio. Only 5 teams have a worse turnover ratio. Do I want to take a record how many combined wins other teams have? You're not going to be shocked. Let's go through it, folks. Las Vegas. Oh, another team that has only 2 wins. They're -14, by the way. Holy cow. -14, 10 games in?
Oh, boy.
Yikes. Titans, -11. 2 wins. Dallas Cowboys, -10. 3 wins. Jacksonville Jaguars, -7. 2 wins. Cleveland Browns, -7. 2 wins. The Panthers are -7 until they were +2 against the Giants. 2 wins before beating the Giants in that game. Guys, it's clear as day. You got to win the possession battle by protecting the ball and not turning it over. You have to. The Giants are not good enough to overcome that. Think about it. Last year, this was a big offseason talking point for me, because I think a lot of times takeaways and giveaways, a lot of it is luck and it's out of your control, right? I just think that's the way it goes. So some of this is luck. I get that. Last year, the Giants, despite the fact they finished with 6-10 last year, 5-11, 6-11, 6-11. Sorry, stupid 17 games. I still can't get that straight. 6-11, +12. All right. So that is an 18 net turnover difference from last year to this year. 18. That's more than 1 per game. That turns wins into losses. The Giants, and this was my point last year in the offseason, if the Giants were less lucky with turnovers last year, they would only won 3 games. And you go back to some of those games they won when they won the turnover by 2 or 3, they would have lost those games. So the turnovers have a lot to do with it, and I don't have an answer for that. I wish I did, and that's why it's not a fun, you don't see a lot of turnover ratio talk on ESPN and things like that, because there's no easy formula for fixing that. And, it's not like the Giants have a million giveaways either. It's more that they just only have 7, is it now, takeaways on the year, I think?
8.
Are they up to 8 now? What do they have? The Giants are at 8. You're right. 7 fumble recoveries. Oh, that's right, because they had 1 this week against the Panthers. That gave them 7 fumble recoveries, and then the 1 interception. They only have 14 giveaways. 14 giveaways isn't great, but it's 24th in the league. That's not like bottom 4. It's not terrible. It's not good, but that has to get fixed. Until that gets fixed, you're going to keep losing these close games. And again, it's not like the Giants getting blown out. So 1 turnover or takeaway either way in these games, you're probably flipping the record in 2 or 3 of these games. And it's just the opposite of what you had in 2022. And I believe in 2022, I think the Giants were either +1 or even that year. They turned out +3 that year. So that was, much more regulated in terms of turnovers and takeaways. So that's it. That's all I got.
I mean, the biggest thing is it's got to be the interceptions. I mean, the Giants have, as we just said, 1 interception on the season. It's the last in the NFL. Last year, with mostly the same defense, I mean, there are obviously a couple of guys here and there that are no longer here, but for the most part, the core of last year's defense is back, and they had 18 interceptions.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that, honestly. The difference between last year and this year.
Well, defensive system has changed.
That's true. But to a tune of 17 less interceptions.
And players told me in the offseason, we think we'll get more picks this year because you're looking at the quarterback and you're playing more zone than man.
Yeah, and look,
So
it's hard to explain, but yeah, that has clearly played a big part in the Giants' record, honestly. You need, as you said, you need to force more takeaways.
Yeah, and look,
protect the ball when you have it.
And the Giants have 7 interceptions this year. That's right in the middle of the league. It's not like they've thrown a bunch of picks. There's 7 fumbles on the other hand. Let's see, how many does that have? 7. There's 7 fumbles, tied for 3rd most. 1 team is 9, 2 teams have 8. The Giants have 7 fumbles lost this year. It's too many.
Yeah.
Got to protect the football. And then, again, critical situations in the other team's red zone, and then There haven't been that many deep in their own zone this year, but they had one against the Panthers in overtime.
And it proved to be costly.
Of course it was. Very frustrating. Big Blue Kickoff Live is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. Don't forget, folks, go check out the Giants Huddle podcast. Our rapid reaction is on there right now. As I mentioned earlier, Tino and I will record a reaction to Joe Shane's press conference today. That'll go up this afternoon. Then we're going to have Papa's perspective go up later in the week, and then we'll have a draft season this week as well. You can find all those podcasts in the Giants Podcast Network podcast feed. Just search for it on your favorite podcast platform, or go to the Giants app or giants.com/podcast. 201-939-4513. All right, folks, it's you the rest of the way. Get on the line, talk some Giants football with us. Hi, Wilson. How are you?
Hey, Johnny and Matt. How are you?
Matt told me you were calling up today, bro. So he was psyched and ready for you.
I knew this call was coming, Wilson.
Hey, Matt. I know you always have confidence in me. But listen, before I start, hopefully you had a good experience there, a good flight home.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right, good. So now, well, officially now we are the laughing stock of the NFL, and we are the worst team in the NFL. But and I guess, Johnny, a lot of people still believe in this head coach, even though his two best players and his two, I guess, leaders in the locker room. One of them says, "I don't know what message you're talking about," and the other one says,
"No, that's not what Dexter Lawrence said, Wilson."
No, Dexter Lawrence. No, Brian Burns said, "I don't know which message you're talking about." Come on, Johnny, you said it. You said it on the podium. I mean, Brian Burns didn't know what message. I said, "What message?" Oh, well, yeah, I was outside hanging out with my buddies. So okay. And Dexter Lawrence said,
He just said the post-game speech because he wasn't in the locker room yet because he was saying hi to his friends with the Panthers. That's all he said. It's not like he was in there, heard it, and didn't understand it.
Okay, Johnny. All right, so listen. I'm not gonna say nothing else. All I'm gonna before I get to Daniel real quick, because if John Mara doesn't somehow call Bill Belichick and tell Bill, please come and fix this once and for all, because if Bill Belichick can't fix it, then we have bigger problems. But that's nor here. We'll have to wait till the end of the season. There's no sense in going back. Obviously, and then Daniel, two things. He's not a top 10 quarterback. He's not a top 20 quarterback. If you want to tell me he's the worst quarterback out of 32 starting quarterbacks, I don't buy it, but I'll give you that. You know what I won't give you? This basket case that Brian Dable has turned this poor guy. Brian, I don't know. He has regressed to a point that nobody reckons. Is he a great quarterback? No, but he's not this basket case. And the reason is it's hard to do your job in any job in the world. I know you can tell me, well, there's that he's got to be tough-minded. It's hard to do your job when you know that they didn't want you there, that the coach doesn't want you there.
They gave him $40 million a year.
Johnny, that was I'm telling. But Johnny, come on, Johnny. They try to replace him this year. The head coach does not believe in this guy, Johnny. I mean, come on.
Wilson, I'm going to ask you the same thing. When Joe Shane and Brian Dable first got here, and they chose not to pick up Daniel Jones' fifth-year option, did Daniel Jones have the best year of his career?
Yes, he did, Johnny. What is that got to do with the way that Johnny? He gets blamed for everything. I mean, the Giants got gashed for 200 yards against the worst team in the NFL. Listen, let's forget about that. I don't want I just want to ask you something.
Yes.
Obviously, you told me don't listen to stuff and don't read stuff, but it's hard not to read stuff when the Post, the Daily News, the WFAN. ESPN, everybody says that the era is over and Daniel Jones should not play again, and Brian Dable left the door open. I want to ask you something because there's something very intriguing. Is there a difference because they cut him right at the end of the year? They like only have to eat out like $20 million or something like that in cap, right?
Yeah,
something like that. They can get out, right? They can get out.
Based on reports, that is what the numbers seem to be.
Okay, is there a difference if they just say, Daniel, listen, we can't go on like this. It's bashing ourselves like our head against the wall, and it's not good for anybody. If they release him, is it the same thing? Is it the same?
No,
thing
I
like
think
that?
some of the money accelerates into this season with this season's cap if you release him now, I think, because it's this season. And I'm not sure they'd be able to handle that cap-wise. So I think it would have to be done in the offseason. I think. I'm not positive about it, but I believe that would be the rule.
I think you're right there.
Oh, all right. So I guess the only other option is to, have him inactive for 7 games. Because Danny, he cannot. I mean, if he doesn't start against the Bucks, against Tampa Bay, you cannot have this guy on the sideline. He cannot go back. Let's say Drew Lock stinks, because he will stink. And Tommy DeVito is what Tommy DeVito is. So, there's no more excuses. They can't blame him for anything anymore. But let's just say Brian Debo can't say, well, God, I mean, what are we doing? He can't put him back. I think the whole stadium will actually jump onto on the field.
Wilson, I will not speak for Matt.
Daniel Jones cannot play it anymore.
Wilson, I will not speak for Matt. I will let him do that himself. But on that point, I happen to agree with you. I think once you decide to move away from him, you're not going back. I think that's probably fair.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Brian Dable, Joe Shane,
thank you for the call, Wilson. Appreciate it.
if they decide to go that route and bench Daniel Jones, and if they say that the injury clause in his contract played a part in that, then yeah, I mean, as we've seen, if that is the reasoning behind it, as we've seen, players get hurt at practice sometimes. Like, if that is the case, then I think, as we've seen other teams do in the past with some quarterbacks, you got to shut them down completely. And I guess it's tough and a little like.
Look, I mean, we've seen other
unfortunate.
teams do it. We saw Sean Payne do it with the Broncos last year with Russell Wilson, right? I mean,
Derek
we've
Carr
seen it
with the
Raiders.
Raiders,
Yep, that's another one.
It does happen sometimes, but yeah, if they decide to make that call and the reasoning is we're trying to prevent that injury clause from kicking in or whatever, then yes, you got to basically shut him down completely, because you don't want to obviously risk any situation then in which he does somehow get hurt and the injury clause kicks in. So
Yes, and please note all those ifs that Matt had.
A lot
in
of
there.
ifs.
A lot of ifs that we don't know about.
Yes.
Exactly, correct. I hate hypotheticals, folks, but I know that's the world we're living in right now. I get that, and we'll do our best to navigate those hypotheticals. Jonathan in Westchester's up next. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, how are you guys?
What's up?
So I know when people have called in the past and complained about the offensive line, you guys have talked about how the Giants have devoted draft picks and free agents to the position. That's true. I'm wondering if the same really can't be said about the interior defensive line. And we've really struggled quite a bit, not just this year but the last 2 years, to stop the run. And I think we had a 7th round pick that we spent on Jordan Riley and a 5th round pick on DJ Davidson. But beyond that, I don't think we've really spent any of our draft picks on the interior defensive line. And same thing with free agents. I mean, Ashawn Robinson's a short-term contract. Nunez Roches, I guess, but not a ton of money spent on free agent run stoppers. So wanted to get your thoughts on that. I think we might have made a mistake by not either spending more money or draft capital on a run stopper this past offseason.
No, Jonathan, good question. And you're right. They have not put as many resources into the defensive line as they say have, or run-stuffing defensive tackle specifically, as they have, say, cornerback. Cordell Flott's a 3rd round pick. Deontay Banks is a 1st round pick. Even safety, Tyler Nubin's a 2nd round pick. Drew Phillips is a 3rd round pick. Belton was a 4th round pick, right?
Yeah.
4th. And offensive line, we talked about that a million times. Neighbors and Hyde and Wandell, all premium round 1, round 2, round 3 selections. So, yeah, look, and you can't spend on every position, right? And I think the theory around the league, quite frankly, is for guys that don't get you sack production on the defensive line, you could find guys on the cheaper side there. I don't think it's all defensive line issue with the run defense, by the way, just for the record. I think it goes deeper than that, than just defense. Oh, you need a better defensive tackle, then all your run issues will be solved. You know where the Giants have the biggest issues this year? Perimeter runs. Pitches to the outside zone, more pin pull stuff on those pitch plays that have really given them issues. Doesn't have much to do with defensive tackles when you're running outside the offensive tackles, I mean. So, yes, that's been a position where the Giants have not chose to, Matt, spend a lot of their resources, and it worked last year with A'Shawn Robinson. I think he did a really good stopping the run, even though the team itself last year didn't. And I think Robinson's having a good year for the Panthers. Had a good game, unfortunately, against the Giants in Munich. But look, I think Joe Schoen talked about it in the offseason. That's a spot where they're looking to add some help, and we'll see if they can do it again this offseason when they get there.
Yeah, look, Jonathan, you're right that there have not been premium draft picks spent on the interior defensive line, but I kind of disagree that they haven't allocated free agent money towards that, because you have to also include the massive contract extension Dexter Lawrence got.
Well, I think he's saying other than Dexter, right?
Yeah, well, of course, but like that eats up when you give your interior defensive lineman, who granted is the best player on the defense, but when you give that guy a big chunk of the salary cap alone, realistically, how much can you spend for the guy playing right next to him? I mean, I feel like a big reason why Leonard Williams was traded last year, because they kind of knew we're probably not going to re-sign him to big money because we already have big money spent on Dexter Lawrence. We need edge rushers, and those guys cost more money than the interior. Like, A'Shawn Robinson signed last year, was a 1 year, I think reportedly around like $5 million. Nacho is making around $4 million reportedly. Like, that's not nothing when you already have one guy making 20-something million on the interior.
That's true. That's fair.
I will agree with you that the draft pick route then may be something, and I'm sure it will be the route that they, the front office decides to explore this offseason in addressing that position. But I don't totally think it's fair to say that they haven't put money towards that position in that area, that position group, because they have. And I think this season, or coming into this season, I think they kind of thought, and I don't know this for sure, but I think their mindset was that having Andre Patterson as the defensive line coach could help elevate the game of guys like Jordan Riley and DJ Davidson and kind of get them up to a level where they can be that contributor right next to Dexter Lawrence.
Well, and I think they thought the structure, too, of Shane Bowen's system would inherently help the run defense, too, right?
Yes, for sure. And I think they obviously expected Nacho to play more of a role than he did last year, which he has been. Mm-hmm. So all of that plays into it. I do think this offseason, especially this draft coming up in April, probably I would take unless they obviously sign someone to free agency, I would think that would be an area or a position that they do look to target in the draft to get a young guy on a rookie contract and then have him develop under Andre Patterson. I think that could be the route they decide to go. But, yeah, it's tough when you have a defensive lineman, an interior defense lineman that you just signed to a huge extension for reportedly $22 million a year, something like $23 million.
And it is hard to spend on two big guys at that spot. Remember, they did talk about Christian Wilkins a little bit in the
Hard Knocks
episode.
That was if they didn't get Brian Burns,
correct,
of course.
Yes.
And Brian Burns is another guy making big money at edge rusher. You have Kayvon Thibodeau making a good amount of money as the 5th overall pick just 2 years ago. Like, how much of the salary cap do you want to allocate to just the defensive line alone?
No, you're right.
Obviously, there are just many holes to fill throughout a roster. So
now, this is one of the better defensive tackle draft classes that we've had in a long time. The last 2 or 3 defensive tackle draft classes have not been good. They've been poor. You have not had a lot of really good players. So I think that's important to note as you look at how the Giants have allocated some of those draft resources. But this year, it's probably one of the better defensive tackle classes I've seen in a bit. So something to keep an eye on moving forward.
The guy I really liked on the interior defense line, I don't know if you remember, he's having a pretty good year for the Rams. Braden First.
Yeah, he's doing pretty good.
Pretty good.
Jared Verse even better. He's having an unbelievable year.
He was never in the cards for the Giants.
No, absolutely not.
But yeah, he's probably the favorite for defensive rookie of the year.
He is in my book. Let's go to Angel in Pennsylvania. He's up next. Hi, Angel.
Hi, Mr. Schmeelk. How you doing?
I'm good, man. You can call me John, my friend.
Sorry.
No, you're good, dude. No worries. What do you got?
I want to talk about the play calling differences that I've noticed between Coach Daboll and Mike Kafka.
Sure. What do you got?
I know that in some cases the offenses have looked better with Brian Daboll, but to me, they're just coaching Daniel Jones in the wrong way. Like with Mike Kafka, like some of the best offensive plays that Daniel Jones was running was like the mesh concept. And this year I've seen mesh run like 2 or 3 times. And also we used to run like the double post with Marcus Johnson, where Marcus Johnson would run the deep post and then we get Wandale underneath or Slayton underneath for huge gains. And it's just like these things that Jones was good at, like I get it, it's a different play caller, but keep it. You know, when Brian Daboll first got here, I remember watching him in like a meeting room with everyone. He was like, hey, we'll take suggestions from anyone. You get a play from high school, I'll call it. And like this stuff is shown to work, and it just doesn't work. And there's no nuance. Even the stuff that Brian Daboll runs, like you would like it that, let's say he's running a play like double slants or something, and build off that, run a sluggo, stuff like that. Like it's vanilla, and it sucks. And there's no, the run game is very vanilla too. Like it's working. Like I think in the last 5 weeks we're like second in EPA with rushing, which is awesome. But it could be so much better if we just built upon our play calling. It's just all vanilla.
Angel, I have trouble getting too upset about the play calling when I rewatch a tape every week and guys are open all over the field. And look, I think we saw that. Like he calls that flea flicker on the 3rd and 1. There were 2 guys open on that play, and the quarterback eats the football. So I know Brian Daboll took the hit on that. He said it was a bad play call in the post game. If you look at the tape, guys are open. Like guys are open. The run game, I think they've really leaned into a lot of their downhill stuff the last few weeks. A lot of duo stuff, a lot of more straight ahead stuff, less zone stuff. Though I think which game was it? 2 weeks ago against Pittsburgh, maybe they did a lot of good stuff with the zone. I forget which game it was. I talked about it on one of our podcasts.
I think it was the Steelers game.
I think it was the Steelers game. But look, are they doing a lot of ridiculous stuff with like route combinations and stuff like that? No, I don't disagree with that. But I think we've also seen, in terms of his accuracy this year with Daniel Angel, is that he's been much more accurate throwing some of those stick routes than he has throwing that stuff where guys are moving across the field. He's had some issues throwing stuff, throwing behind, throwing ahead. So when I see stuff that's available and plays to be made on tape, I have hard getting too mad at the play calling when I do see guys open and plays available. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. And I got one more question, and I'll take it off the air.
Sure. What do you got?
I know you guys work for the Giants, so you might want to answer this a certain way, but maybe I could just speak generally. Like, what is your philosophy moving forward if some changes have to be made? Would you rather one or the other, Daboll or Shane, go, or do you think both of them should go? Because in my opinion, I think you either keep both of them and give them another year, or a year or two to figure it out, or you just got to restart. Because if you just get rid of Daboll, then maybe there's a coach that comes in here that doesn't have the same continuity with Shane. Or if you get rid of Shane and keep Daboll, then maybe you close yourself off to certain GM candidates that might not want to work with Brian Daboll, you know?
No, appreciate it, Andrew. Good question. Look, we're not going to advocate for ownership to keep or fire anybody. That's not what we're doing here, especially not letting anybody go. We're friends with Brian Daboll and Joe Shane. We see him in the cafeteria. That's not what we do here. I can speak generally about what you're talking about. I don't believe in letting general managers go after 3 years, especially when the first year is nothing but a teardown project and not actually building anything. So in general, I don't think 3 years is enough for a GM to transform a team, unless you somehow figure out a way to get some transformational quarterback in the house, and that changes everything, right? So that's my general opinion on general managers. Now, I think you make a point that's a good one, where it makes sense that you want to keep the GM and coach together, right? And once you change one and not the other, we saw that with Tom Coughlin and Jerry Reese back in the day, where you can get some issues then, where they're not in sync in terms of how long they're here and all that sort of stuff. So I get where you're coming from on that. But I'll just leave this to you, Matt, and I'll say, I think we all know John Mara wants to get off the carousel in terms of changing coaches and people in the front office all the time. And I think they believe continuity is important to success. Now you have to have the right people in there to have continuity with, 100%. So that's kind of where I'll leave it. I don't think I could take it much further than that.
Yeah, in my eyes, and I think this goes without saying, but one of the most important dynamics in any NFL organization is the dynamic between a head coach and the general manager.
Good point.
And, you can say what you want about what's gone on the field the last, this season, last season, but the relationship between those two is strong. They work as a unit to build this roster and make decisions. And quite frankly, you don't see that all across the NFL with every single team. And I think that is a big positive and something you don't just want to throw away and get rid of. Because if for any team, if you do bring in, you clear out everyone, you bring in a new GM, even if he hires his coach, chances are that GM and head coach is not going to have the relationship that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen do. These guys are very close, have been together for years, were together in Buffalo. And honestly, I really think that makes a difference. And another thing, and I mentioned this, I believe, when I was on the show with you last week, John, is that I know it's year 3 of this regime, but 2 years ago, in 2022, the first year under Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, the Giants made what just about everyone would consider a very surprising playoff run. I don't know, at least outside of this building, expectations were not very high in that 2022 season. And the Giants came out, surprised everyone, made the playoffs, won a playoff game, made it to the divisional round. And I think that the fact that the team had so much success in year 1 might have changed, I guess, the calculations for how far away this team might have been to truly being that perennial contender.
Well, I'll just leave it at this, Matt. Heading into that year, they did not pick up Daniel Jones' 5th-year option, and after the year, they gave him a big long-term contract. So clearly, the calculation did change to some extent because of the year.
Yes. So, and again, what you just brought up, that was a decision that was made by the decision makers in the building. There's no denying that. That was their decision. But I think that this team just needed, and I guess still kind of does need, a rebuild. There are core pieces here that I think are very talented and can be core pieces for a playoff team. There are some that need to be improved and upgraded. I think is pretty obvious. But I think, and it's not fully an excuse, but I think that playoff run 2 years ago changed the trajectory of the rebuild and might have led to some decisions that, the decision makers here wish they could take back now, but there's no going back. I think, as you mentioned, a GM needs more than 3 seasons to build a team. It is a process to take what Joe Schoen inherited a couple years ago and make that into a perennial playoff team, because he inherited what was quite a messy situation. So I think you need to give more than 3 years. And again, the relationship between those two is the most important relationship, I think, in any organization, and they have a great one. And I mean, as you said, I don't want to sit here and advocate for anything, but it would make plenty of sense to me. I'll put it this way. It would make a lot of sense to me to have both of those guys back, because I think that they still are the ones that could take this team to where we all want it to be.
No, yeah, I think it's well said. 201-939-4513. 201-939-4513. John is in Staten Island. Johnny, how are you? John, going once. John, you there?
I might have screwed that up.
Okay, no problem. Want to try that again, or is he hung up on Pearson? All right, we'll try to get John up here in a second at 201-939-4513. And, guys, if you're just tuning in now, we've said this before on the show. I just want to be clear about it. Look, just from a personal perspective, as I've said to you, the Giants, they don't really have any rules for what we do here. They're very lenient with what we do. The one thing we don't do, we don't call for people to lose their jobs. That's one thing we don't do. We're not going to do that here. We could talk about team, how everyone does, state of the team, team building, all details, football stuff. That's not one thing we're not going to do here, but we could, as you just did, we talk about the situation, what the evaluation is, what the factors are. We can do all that stuff. But, guys, we see Dave's and Joe every day in the cafeteria upstairs. Just as a human being and a person, I wouldn't feel right about doing that sort of thing. So
No, I agree with you completely. And
I'm just setting expectations. That's all I'm doing for the fans out there.
And believe it or not, we do try to still be as honest and transparent as we can.
We never say anything we don't believe.
So, yeah.
So that's where we are. Jay in Brooklyn. Jay, what's going on, man?
Hey, John, how you doing, man?
We're good, bro. What's going on?
Hey, real quick, on Joe Shane.
Yeah.
Once this inevitable situation happens with Jones, whether it's this week, next week, the month after, I think the eyes are going to properly be focused on GM Joe Shane. Outside of hope, right? And I think both of them should be back, Dable and Shane, by the way, next year. But outside of hope and, oh, well, it's not 4 years, how could you bang your hand on the table saying this guy should definitely be back?
All right. For the people that are anti-Joe and anti-Daniel, I'll throw this out to you. And we all saw it live on TV. Well, not live. We saw it on recorded TV. Now that you look back, was Joe Shane doing the right thing, trying to trade up for either Jaden Daniels or Drake May last year? I mean, it seems like that was based on the evaluation, how those quarterbacks have played. That would have been a pretty smart move. And frankly, a tough decision to make after you just signed Daniel to that contract, but they were willing to make a tough decision and a tough move there that might have been a little bit awkward because they thought it was in the best interest of the teams and all three of those quarterbacks. Thought Caleb Williams in it just because he was one of those three. Look like they're going to be pretty good players. So I think, Jay, that should give you some hope that they know how to evaluate the quarterback position. And they, even though it would have been tough and it would have been awkward, they were trying to bring a quarterback in here last offseason if the opportunity arose.
Yeah, how many times across the NFL do we see, GMs doubling down on a bad decision instead of just sort of admitting that, it may not have been the greatest decision and trying to fix it? I mean, I feel like we see countless situations like that every single season where instead of just, admitting, maybe this wasn't the best decision.
Or at least we want to give ourselves a backstop in case it doesn't work out. Because of Daniel's case, and that was a big thing Joe said last offseason, was the injury factor, right?
Yeah.
They just didn't know how he was going to come back being healthy.
Yeah, so I think that is a great point. The fact that, as we all saw on Hard Knocks, it's not like Joe Shane did not attempt to move up to get one of these quarterbacks that are now, thriving as a rookie. He tried, but in trade talks, it takes two to tango, and you can't force it. It's not Madden. You can't just force a team to do a trade. So
Jay, how about that? Did I sell you a little bit on that one?
Not really, because
it was a good try, though, right?
No, it's a great try, John. I mean, you're from Brooklyn. I'm always going to give you a benefit of the doubt.
I appreciate that, Jay.
But my thing is John and Matt, you guys follow the other sports. Football is the one sport you can't hide in. I mean, basketball, you can save your team if you hit the lottery and you draft LeBron James. Baseball,
Sure.
You can bury your mistakes in a $300 million payroll. Football, you either draft well or you don't. And I'm going to be honest, the first two drafts so far are not turning out that well. And I feel almost like the goalposts are being moved for Shane a little bit, where it's like, this is his third year, and it went from, this is a big year, to where now, look how many young players he's playing. Like, there comes a time where, regardless of the situation, he has to win, guys. Like, he has to win eventually, regardless of the quarterback, regardless of the... It's almost like we're trying to say, like, forget about the first 2 years. We're really starting... This is the real first year. And that's a little frustrating. Like, what are you selling going forward? That's what I mean.
No, look, Jay, and look, I totally get your point there. It has been 3 years, and for a fan, except for that one first year, that was very surprising. The last 2 years have been tough, and they've been frustrating. And I understand why you're not heading into, week 11 at 2-8, coming off a loss to the Panthers, saying, the future is bright, let's rock and roll. Jay, I totally get where you're coming from, dude. Totally get with you. And I'm not even going to try to argue off that ledge, because as a fan, I totally get thinking that way. I do. I get it. But look, you hope these young players continue to develop. Even the guys that you drafted 2 years ago in the 2022 NFL draft, right, that are still on the roster. You hope this was the start of Evan Neal becoming a guy that you can at least count as a starter somewhere on the offensive line, whether, tackle, maybe long-term guard, who knows? That this is the start of that, you don't know. Kayvon Thibodeau, has he been Aiden Hutchinson? No, but he's been a solid player in the National Football League. So this year's class, I think, has shown a ton of promise, whether it's Tyrone Tracy or Drew Phillips, guys like that. So Malik Neighbors, obviously, you're very happy with the job he's done. So there are some guys that have shown promise, have you gotten everything you wanted as fast as you might want it? No, probably not. And I get that. I totally understand where you're coming from on that. But again, given that first offseason was more of a tear down than a build up, spared the draft, but in terms of free agency, I'm with Matt. Like I think Joe Shane has a good head on his shoulders. I think he understands how you allocate resources to build a football team. Look, drafting is hard. Even the best drafters have bad drafts. You know, we always joke, like the Cowboys have been one of the best drafting teams in the league, right? Traditionally, Will McClay, they draft really well. Look at their draft 2 years ago. They drafted Mozzie Smith in the first round and Luke Schoonmaker in the second round. How does that look right now? Looks awful, right?
Yeah.
Even teams that are really good at drafting can sometimes have picks that miss.
Look,
It happens.
John Lynch traded a massive haul to move up for Trey Lance. And the reason he kind of got saved by that is because he happened to take Brock Purdy with the very last pick in the draft. And Brock Purdy turned out to be the quarterback of the future instead of Trey Lance.
I know people say, well, he's the one that picked Brock Purdy, right? Yeah, but he could have picked Brock Purdy in the 4th round, 5th round, or 6th round. If you liked him that much, you would have picked him in the 6th round. Trust me. He would have just, I'm not going to use the 6th round pick on him, Matt. I'm going to use the 7th on him. I'm going to wait. I think he's the franchise guy, but I'm not going to pick him in the 6th. I'm going to wait till the 7th. Like, that's not obviously how that went. And, you know, you go back to even, and I'll go back to Dallas, they didn't want Dak Prescott. They tried to draft Connor Cook from Michigan State. He got picked a few picks before Dak. They tried to trade up and draft Paxton Lynch the year before. Sometimes you need some good fortune. And the Giants have also had a ridiculous amount of injuries with the guys they've drafted the last 2 years too. Wanda Robinson, whole last year with the ACL. We know about all Evan Neal's issues. Zudu has had a bunch of injury issues. Has that helped inhibit some of their development? Sure. Now, at this point, should you have overcome some of those things? Absolutely. No question, not arguing that. But if you look at the analytics of it, as you go through a long period of time, there are outliers and there are differences on the margins for sure. But drafting is just really hard. And sometimes your draft works, sometimes they don't. Now, obviously, that's what you're judging a general manager on. Eventually, if you don't draft good enough players, that's the deal, right? And that's going to happen. But I wouldn't take that 3-year sample size and move on that quickly when, again, I just don't think 3 years for a general manager, turn around a team in a situation the Giants were in at the time, is a long enough window to make things work. And that's where I'll kind of leave that.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that's just the very last thing that the last caller mentioned was he brought up all these, different situations across different sports and how, the NFL is different. Well, the NFL is also different because the quarterback position, probably the most important position in all of sports. Of any individual sport, the quarterback is the most important guy.
Yeah.
And so, not to put the Giants, current season all on the quarterback, because it's not all on him. But we've seen other situations around the NFL where a quarterback, just bringing in a new quarterback, whether it's a rookie, a veteran, whatever, elevates the whole rest of the team. And that is one thing that has not been the case the last couple of years here. Who's to say that if a new quarterback is brought in the offseason, again, whether it's a rookie or a veteran, free agent, whatever, that the same thing can't happen? Because we have seen some encouraging signs from a lot of these young players that have been drafted over the last 3 seasons. It's not been all home run picks, but there have at least been flashes from most of the guys, at least taken with premium picks. Day 1 picks, day 2 picks. Again, it hasn't all been perfect. You're not going to find any general manager across the NFL that has a perfect resume when it comes to drafting. Because as John just said, drafting is difficult. But, just look at this year's draft. This year's draft class could be the type of draft class that could change the fortunes of an organization. You have at least 5 guys that are already, after 10 weeks of the season, key contributors. 5 starters. And starters that are actually, playing, at the very least, pretty good football. And that doesn't even mention, the undrafted defensive lineman Elijah Chapman. Darius Muasau, who of the draft class, has gotten the least playing time. Like Jake Kubas, who obviously hasn't been on the active roster, but not actually active on game day yet. But that's like a developmental interior offensive lineman. Like, this draft class could be a draft class, as we've seen with other teams around the NFL. All it takes sometimes is one really good draft class to sort of change the fortunes of an organization. And honestly, and you know how high I was on this draft class before the season started. You made fun of me because I was like, I love these guys, but so far they've proven me right.
It's more teasing than anything else.
Yeah. And I think if a quarterback situation is, changed over the offseason and someone new is brought in, it could potentially change a lot of things.
And again, that's an if.
Roster.
Just again, if.
And again,
we have a lot of ifs there. So just keep that in mind. And look, I was joking with Jay, did I sell you on that? But I was being honest. Like, the way I see Joe Shane's mentality, and John Staten Island is going to want to talk about team building too. So Pearson, you could bring John on here. I like the way Joe Shane thinks about team building. Don't pay the running back. Why? You can draft Tyrone Tracy in the 5th round, and he can give you great production. That's why you don't pay as great as Saquon is, and we've talked about how great Saquon is on the show. But if you can find a guy that makes $12 million less in the 5th round that you have under team control for 4 years, that's 5 years younger, guess what? Makes sense. Makes sense to go with the younger guy. Generally speaking, safety's not a premium position. Now, Xavier McKinney's doing his best to make that move look like the wrong one the way he's playing this year. No question about it. Would he be doing that here? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. But he understands pass rush is important, premium positions, that's where you invest the money. And again, the fact that he was trying to shoot for upside with a quarterback in the draft last year with the potential trades made sense to me. It was worth doing. So I'm encouraged by the way he thinks about team building and what's important to him as a team builder. Whether or not you like some fans out there might or might not like some of the players he actually drafted over the past couple of years.
And just real quick.
And then John, we'll get to that.
Since you mentioned Xavier McKinney, and obviously McKinney having a great year for the Green Bay Packers, but I would say it would be a pretty easy point to make that Tyler Nubin has showed more this season as a rookie than Xavier McKinney did at the beginning of his career.
Well, I mean, he hadn't played yet, right? His rookie year yet this year, but he hurt his foot.
He got hurt. He came back in the second half of the season, but still, Tyler Nubin he's been on the field for he's been on the field but for all but 2 defensive snaps this season.
Is it really all but 2?
All but 2. He's played 100% of the defensive snaps in 9 of 10 games, and the one game that he didn't play every snap, he missed 2 snaps as a rookie, and is the leading tackler among rookies as well. Like, Tyler Nubin has played pretty good. Yeah, pretty well.
I'm with you on that. No, I'm with you on that. I think that's fair. All right, John, what do you got for us?
I want to stay on the same subject. I am a fan of Joe Shane's. I think I have total confidence in him. I think that we sometimes look at the draft and free agency as the only way to get good players, though. And I think you're missing the development of players you already have. And I look back at the Giants over the last 3 years, and I say, how many players have gotten better under this coaching staff? And I think the players don't generally get better. The best players that are coming in now, Bobby Okereke, Burns, the offensive line, they all would develop somewhere else.
Well, I mean, I would put 2 guys out there, John, for you. I put 2 guys out there. I think John Michael Schmitz has certainly been better in his second year.
Okay, yes.
Under Carmen Brasillo.
Get to that in a second.
Yep.
I think Carmen Brasillo was the first step of Joe Shane saying, because if you remember back in the beginning of the year, he said, I looked at Evan Neal's tape from college, and I can't believe this guy. It's 2 different guys. Why? Because we didn't develop him as a player. I think we failed him. I think we failed Daniel Jones. 6 years. The guy can't slide. Jamie Gillen. 3 years, he's still kicking the ball down the center of the field, and he can't make an extra point as the backup emergency kicker, and he can't kick a field goal as the backup emergency kicker. So I say to myself, I need to talk to these position coaches, and we need to get a little more out of these players in position, particularly in technique. How does a player line up offside? How does a player line up in an illegal formation? I don't know anything about football, John. I'm telling you, I don't know anything about football. But I do know that if the old coach's axiom, you practice the way you want to practice the way you're going to play. Okay, well, you want to play the way you practice, and I think this team is playing the way they practice. And I think that some things need to be changed there in order to develop better technique across the board. And imagine if you had a coaching staff that could have the players on your team playing above the level they were drafted. Okay, so your third-round players after 2 years are playing even with the second-round players from their class.
I hear you.
Developing players is the way to do this. And what you said before is exactly true. Imagine you could develop offensive linemen, and you don't have to take an $18-20 million tackle because you got a tackle on his rookie contract, and you don't care if he walks because you got one behind him. You know what I'm saying? That used to happen with Giants defensive interior linemen. They're all over the league. Okay, because whoever was the defensive line coach was apparently doing the right thing.
Now, and I will say Andre Patterson, John, is a very good developer of players. He is.
Well, and this is what I mean. That's what we need to get better at. I think that's what we need to get better at, because I've been watching the Giants for 65 years. Okay, I'm going to continue to watch them. Sometimes it's not easy, but the thing that I bring on Sundays, that I brought last Sunday and I'm going to bring this Sunday, is I want to see improvement. I was very happy to see Evan Neal have a much better game. Okay, if he can improve to the point where he either is your swing tackle next year or your right tackle next year, with Illumador being your swing tackle and Andrew back, okay, now we're talking.
John,
You know what I'm
good
saying?
call. No,
Now
John,
we're
good call. Appreciate it, man. Awesome stuff. And look, I said before the season, Matt, the most important thing for the Giants getting better this year was the guys they already had on the roster taking that next step, right? We talked about it a million times. The second-year guys, the third-year guys, the guys on rookie contracts, getting better. Azeez Ojulari, I think, has shown progress this year, right? I think he's healthy. He's got a little bit better. I mentioned John Michael Schmitz. He's a guy. I think Jason Pinnock has shown periodic improvement since he's been here.
Micah McFadden.
Micah McFadden's another guy. I think he's gotten better. I'm with you.
Each year.
Yeah, so I think there are guys that have progressed, others that have made progress, have other guys not progressed as quickly as you might like, sure, like a Jalen Hyatt. Though you hope maybe that game in London, that game in Munich might be the first step. He caught those two big passes in the 2-minute drill. Eli. Daniel trusted him on those quick stop routes. Wow. It's been a long couple of days. I need the bye week badly. To make those catches on that final 2-minute drill where, Daniel executed that pretty well. So, Cordell Floss, another guy. You have his page up right there. Another guy that I think has played pretty well this year.
He has shown improvements this year, certainly from last year, and that's with playing sort of a new position. He played in the slot last year, and now he's playing outside corner. And, is he playing at a all-pro level? No, but he's definitely shown improvements from last year, which, as, the caller just said, you want to just see improvements and some growth from these young guys. I agree with the sentiment of that last caller. There's just one person he brought up, and I'm sorry to nitpick this one thing, but I'm just like, you gotta be kidding bringing this up. Knocking Jamie Gillen for
I was gonna let that one go.
Being the best emergency kicker. I mean, the guy is a punter. Like, obviously, do you want him to be able to go in and potentially make like a 30-yard field goal, an extra point? Of course.
And I actually think he's gotten better as a punter. I actually do think he has been.
But you can't judge him as a punter based on his ability as the emergency kicker. Because if you look at his punting numbers, they're among the best of his career. I mean, 46.4 yards per punt is 0.4 yards below his career high. 52% of his punts inside the 20. That is a new career high. Granted, it's been 6 games. He obviously missed a few games, but I thought Jamie Gillen is, all season I've been noticed since when he's been out there, I think he's been pretty good and the best he's been since he got to the Giants 2 years ago. So I'm sorry just to nitpick that one thing, but I like Jamie a lot, and to knock him because he missed one kick as the emergency kicker in week 2, I think that's just not fair.
By the way, I do want to applaud the callers. I think you guys have had some very thoughtful, good conversation stuff today. I think you brought some good points to the table, good stuff to discuss, good stuff to digest, and have larger conversations about the team.
Even you, Wilson.
Yeah, I think Wilson was very well put together today.
No, he was. He typically is.
No, everyone's done a really nice job. We appreciate you guys calling and talking about it. And like we said, we can talk about these details and how you fix things and what's wrong. That stuff, we'll be doing it for a while now because there's a lot of season left. So keep the calls coming. Really good conversation, folks. Matt, this was fun, man. Appreciate it, dude.
And look, we'll see.
Enjoy your bye week.
Thank you. You
Are
too.
you going away? What are you doing? What do you got?
Just going out east for a couple of days, Long Island.
Okay, I was going to say there isn't much further east than here. But I guess Long Island would be it.
Yeah, just chill weekend out there.
I will be at home watching television.
I'll probably be doing the same, but just out east.
It'll be awesome. For Matthew Citak, I'm John Schmeelk. Great job, Pearson. Pearson, you enjoy your golf-filled next 5. How many tee times do you have scheduled right now, Pearson? How many do you got? What do you have, like 6 tee times?
I only have 3 tee times.
Okay, only 3. Are you going back to? I'm assuming you're going back to Boston.
I'm not.
Really, you're staying here?
Yes, I'm hanging around.
Ooh, okay. I expect at least 2 or 3 more tee times set up by the time you leave the office tomorrow. For Pearson, great job as always. And again, we'll have the huddle coming up, reacting to Joe's press conference after 3. The press conference is live at 3 on the Giants app, Giants.com, Giants YouTube page. Check it out. And then, guys, I'm not going to talk to you live for another 5 days. I'm not going to say I'm going to miss you. I will. We love you guys. We'll talk to you in 5 days. Enjoy your bye week, everybody. See you then.